Danger. Once you get into the desert, there's no going back, said the camel driver. And when you can't go back, you have to worry only about the best way of moving forward. The rest is up to Allah, including the danger.
Good afternoon, Young Kings. Back with part 3 of the absence of willpower. We're going to try to conclude this video and make sure that we can wrap up all the points that I had in my notes. If you haven't watched the first 2 videos, I say go back and watch those 2, and then you can watch this one at a later state. If you haven't liked the other videos, go back and like those videos. Leave a comment. Once again, if there's something in the video that triggers you, put it in the comments and we can address that, or we can have another video on there and such. So we're talking about willpower and how Will came into the Oscars at a depleted state. Reading this article from the APA, I'll pick up where I left off. And it says, maintaining a steady blood glucose level, such as eating a regular healthy meals and snacks, may help prevent the effects of willpower depletion. Like, your diet, how you eat, is part of your preparation for those stressful moments. So if you're eating junk food and you're eating all weird times of the day and your body's not replenished, both with nutrition and with rest and with love and comfort within your environment, then you're going to enter into environments where you are depleted. And from a depleted state, you're going to get less than desirable results. You're not going to get an optimal performance with, not having the right nutrition, not having the right training regimen in place. It's like going to play, people that run in the Olympics or play Olympic Games, they're spending those 4 years in between Olympics training their body and disciplining their body so they can get out and execute. They can't go and just say, the Olympics is 6 months out or a year out, I want to start training for the Olympics. No, it's a 4-year journey to do that. And you can tell there's a disparity between those who are at the top and receive the gold, and then those who are just make it to the Olympics. And even making it to the Olympics is a big thing. But those who really thrive in Olympics, they commit their lives to being trained and being disciplined. They're watching what they eat, they're watching their workouts and making sure they're pushing their bodies to the limit. You cannot push your body to the limit if you're not feeding it right, if you're not giving it the right rest, if you're not placed in an environment that's conducive to you growing. That's why a lot of people who train for the Olympics, they leave their hometown. Boxers who's training for a match, they go off away to a boxing camp. Preseason for football, basketball, they have to leave somewhere to get isolated, to equip themselves for what they're about to embark upon. And that's right in line with self-control. Like, if you're not building your self-control up when it's peace, then when it's time for war, then and the time for you to really exercise some discipline, you're not going to be able to display the discipline. It's just that simple. And that's what it says, sweat in peacetime prevents blood in war. So the more you're able to go through and work through your battle drills, and you do it, and we used to call in the Army the crawl, walk, run phase, and then you vary the conditions. First you start crawling, and then you start walking, and then you start running. And then when you're running, you vary the conditions. Or you may be running while it's perfect weather outside, but then can you run in the rain? You vary the conditions in which you're running in. Can you do it in the snow? Can you do it in the desert? So you alter the conditions. That's way you're being properly equipped to handle what needs to be handled. And then it talks about, in this article, it says, because a depleted state in one area can reduce willpower in other spheres. So if you don't have the willpower with your diet, then you're probably not going to have the willpower with your finances. If you're not having the willpower with finances, then you're probably not going to have good willpower, with employment. If you're not having good willpower in employment, you're probably struggling in relationships. If you're struggling in relationships, you're probably going to respond and slap some people. So it just because it's one area, it bleeds over to other areas as well. So you got to continue to feed and manage your willpower. And once again, it says it's just like a muscle strengthened by regular exercise, regularly exerting self-control to improve willpower and strength over time. So practice it. Even when you don't need to, when you think you don't, everything is going cool, practice restraint. Practice not eating that chip right after another. Practice saying no to some things that it's not bad for you to say no, but maybe just time for you to practice some self-control. So part of this video is me talking to myself with some self-restraint as well. You know, the ironic thing about this incident on the Oscars is that, you know, people say it was staged or was it not staged? Is it real? Some people say Will was reaching his higher self and this and that. And I say all those are false narrative and false statements. One, I could say he's not reaching his higher self because he wasn't motivated by the Most High, or it didn't originate from himself. It came from him reacting to what his wife was doing and him responding to Chris Rock and what he perceived to be an injustice. Whether injustice or not, that's up for you all to decide. And I don't think he woke up to his higher self either. And the reason I say I don't believe he ascended to his higher self and that's why he responded like that, because when you respond with the higher version of yourself, it won't leave you sorrow. You won't feel like, oh man, I messed that up. Now, in Ecclesiastic, there's a time for peace and there's a time for war. There's a time to live and there's a time to die. You know, there's a time in every season. There may be a time to slap somebody, but I don't think that was the appropriate application of his season to slap somebody. Like I said, if he initially had the same reaction his wife had when the Joker was first met, then I could say, you know, he reached his breaking point. That was him reaching his higher self. But his initial response was a contradiction to what his later response indicated. So that tells me he wasn't ascending to a higher version of himself. That told me he was descending into his ego and what he felt he needed to do versus ascending to a higher version of himself. Another reason I don't think he was ascending is because he didn't acknowledge the Father in him. You know, if you're doing the will of the Father, you know, the Father wants to be acknowledged. Like if he got up and said his speech, like, you know what, I've been in my prayer closet, I've been instructed by the Most High to go out and protect my family by all means necessary by those who pose it, and I'm not apologetic about that. If he had said that, then you could say, okay, yes, he's ascending. But he didn't make any kind of indication that he had been in his prayer closet, that he was ascending. It was just a lapse of judgment, so to speak, one that he regret. When you ascend to something, there won't be regret. When you're doing what the Most High has called you to do, he's the Most High. He called you to do it. You were obedient. So I don't think this was an obedience thing for him. I think it was an emotional temper tantrum, which we all have had at times in our life. And Chris Rock was just the object. The Will Smith actions, he was just his actions and his behavior. He was just used as an instrument of destruction. The real person that caused this was his spouse. She caused it not only with that look, she caused it with the entanglement. She caused it with all these red table talks. She's the real one who initiated Chris Rock being slapped. She's the one that caused that. It could have been, well, I don't know if it could have been somebody else. You know, I think Chris Rock was just the target of opportunity to project strength on someone he thought that he had dominance over. You got to be careful. You know, when people think you're weak, they will try to exert their will on you. Will, from the absence of willpower. You got to be careful that, you know, you're not the victim of somebody else's trauma, because you could be. And I'm not saying that Chris Rock is completely innocent, but that's what he does. He's a comedian. He pushes the limits. So if it's okay for Will to slap him, should everybody who's offended by comedians slap comedians now? Should everybody who feels offended slap somebody else? You know, that's a slippery slope when people go through to justify it under the umbrella of he's protecting his queen. When is this queen gonna protect him? That's a question we really need to be asking. Like, should she be protected? I'll give you my opinion. I think she's for the streets. There's, when I went through my dissension of a divorce, I went through a lot. But once I realized she was out in the streets, there was nothing I could do. I mean, I wasn't going to put up with that. And this is a catch-22, because I can sit here and tell you that I cheated before. And I can tell you that I wouldn't accept my woman cheating. And that sounds sexist, and I'm on here being transparent with you. But if you don't understand the difference, then we can have a conversation probably in the comments about that, or we can lead it to another video. But it's the way it is. But anyways, let's get back. We're at 10 minutes. And the ironic thing about that is Chris Rock is going on tour. And yes, I did go buy my tickets to floor seats. And the name of his tour is Death to the Ego. So you got the absence of willpower, and he's about to go on tour, say Death to the Ego. Ego is defined as a person's sense of self-esteem and self-importance. So this is going to be an interesting tour. And I pray that God grants him liberty to really, truly express what he was intending on expressing, and not hold back in light of this event. But I will conclude all these videos on this. Matthew 26, 36 through 56. An inappropriate use of fraudulent might / power by Peter, Apostle Peter. I'll say that again. Matthew 26, 36 through 56. Easter's coming right up, so it's right down your alley. And an inappropriate use of fraudulent might and power by Peter. Or in today's term, inappropriate use of might and power used by Will Smith. So let's go through this real quick, because we have 12 minutes. I'm gonna read this. And Matthew 26, 36 starts, but it says, cometh that Yeshua with them took them up to a place called Gethsemane, and he used the disciples to sit there. And I'm kind of stumbling through that, so I'm gonna go through this whole thing again. Then it cometh to Yeshua with them up to a place called Gethsemane, and he said unto his disciples, sit here while I go and pray yonder. So this is the climax of everything that's happening. Kind of like the climax of what happened at the Oscar. There's things that happened up until this point that got them to the garden, just like there's things in real life that led up to getting to the Oscars. This is the climax of everything that's happening. And Yeshua was telling them, hey, we in the garden. This time, this is what I've been training y'all for over the last 3 years. Sit here while I go pray yonder. And he took with him Peter and 2 of the sons, Zebedee, and he began they were sorrowful and very heavy. Like this stuff is really happening. And he said in them, in verse 38, he said unto them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry here, watch with me. Like this, what I'm going through is a lot. I've been dealing with a lot over this last few years, and my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry, kind of wait with me right here while we in this place. I just need you right here in this moment. And he went a little further, and he fell on his face, and he prayed and said, oh, my Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thy will. So he's saying like this is a burden. Like, God, if there's another way for me to accomplish my purpose, then send it. But nevertheless, let thy will be done. Not my will, but thy will. So it gets to a part where then it gets to verse 40. And he says, and he cometh to the disciple and find them asleep. And he said to Peter, what? Ye cannot watch with me for 1 hour? Like, man, I just told you, like, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful. Just tarry with me and pray, like do something. And I come back within an hour and you sleep. And he says, what, could ye not watch with me for an hour? 41, watch and pray that ye not enter into temptation, that the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Verse 41, and I'm struggling with this. I hope you can see through some of my missed words what I'm trying to convey to you. Verse 41 of Matthew 26, it says, watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. Like, you got to be able to watch. You got to pray because temptation is coming. But the Most High said, I don't want you to enter into it. Watch and pray. Because indeed, the spirit indeed is willing, but your flesh is weak. Your flesh want to slap people. But, you know, I need you to watch and pray. And then he went away again a second time and he prayed, O Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. Like, Lord, if you're not going to remove this, then have your way, thy will be done. And he came back and he found Peter asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. Now, the same guys that were supposed to be waiting and praying with them are sleeping. He hasn't come back the first time and find you asleep. He chastised you and he comes back and he finds you asleep again. And then verse 44, and he left them and went away and prayed a third time, saying these words. Then the cup coming to his disciple and said to them, sleep on, take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hand of sinner. So the third time he came back, he said, man, I ain't gonna even try to wake you up. Sleep on, because this cup is not passing. I have to get through this season. And then he lets them sleep. And then it says, verse 36, he says, rise, let us be going. Behold, it's at hand. Doeth the person that's going to betray me. So he know Judas is coming. And while he spake, that's what it says, spake, spoke. But this is the King James Version. So it says, Judas, one of the 12, came in with the great multitude, with the swords and staffs, and the chief priests and elders of the people. Now that he betrayed him, he gave him a sign. He gave the people who was coming with the sign, said, whoever I shall kiss, that's the same as he. Hold him fast. He's like, I'm going to show you who Yeshua is. I'm one of his disciples. So when I get there in front of you, I'm going to go up and I'm going to kiss him on the cheek. And I'm going to tell you which one that you need to arrest. And forth he came to Yeshua and he said to him, Hail, Master, and he kissed him. And Yeshua said to him, friend, wherefore art thou come? Like, why are you come? Like, he wanted him to know why he was there. Like, he was to fulfill the prophecies and stuff of that nature. And then he came and he laid his hands on Yeshua and they took him. So he came in and tried to give him a kiss and say, he even came with the right words, say, Hail, Master. And he tried to honor him with giving him a kiss. And that kiss was of deception. So, and then Yeshua said to him, well, we skip over the next verse. And he says, behold, one of them which were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and smote off his ear. So that servant was Peter, so they went to pull up and try to tackle Yeshua or try to arrest him. And Peter, the guy who's been sleeping all the time, was supposed to be praying and getting his revelation. The first thing he immediately do is pull up his sword and he slices off his ear, kind of like what Will did. He just went to the first physical thing he could try to do, and what he did, slap him across the ear. Inappropriate use of might and power, a fraudulent use of it. Like, it wasn't a time for him to use might. It wasn't a time, it wasn't an appropriate place or incident for him to use his sword at that time. That wasn't a time for the sword. That was a time for him to be praying, for him to get his orders from the Most High, for him to be ready and equipped to be able to handle this thing with class. So Peter defaulted back to his human side and he went to the sword. So I don't think Will ascended when he slapped him. I think he descended and he got back into his human state, and he was tired of being the butt of all jokes. And his wife was there and she was making accusations about what you're going to do. Are you going to protect me? Are you going to defend me? And this and that. So he went out and pulled his sword and he slapped him. And then Yahshua said unto him, put up again thy sword into thy place, for all they have taken the sword shall perish by the sword. So if that's going to be your method of dealing with things, that's going to be the same way you perish. Like, let him continue to slap people because they're saying something about his wife. You're gonna mess around and slap the wrong person. Because if you realize when Chris Rock got slapped, he paused to the side, and then Will went back and sat down, and then he started yelling at him. If you listen to Chris' words carefully, he says, I could, but nah, I'm not gonna do that. So he had a thought that he was about to say something else, but he practiced constraint. And he says, nah, I'm not gonna go there. So he had the ability to return in kind. And Chris Rock is smaller than Will Smith. If they got into a physical altercation, all indication probably would say that Will Smith would have won. But I doubt he's as sharp as Chris Rock's mouth. You know, he could have said something back, but he chose to practice constraint, something that Will didn't use. So if Will has ascended, as some people say, and he has found his method of dealing with people that are saying something against him, if that's what he's going to go do and slap everyone, like he says, put up thy sword into thy place, for all that take of the sword shall perish by the sword. And then he says, what do you think? Like, get into the next, thinketh that I can now pray to the Father, and he will presently, give me more than 12 legions of angels just to come and destroy this place. So he's like, you trying to protect me? Like, I don't need your protection. Will Smith is trying to protect his wife. Does she need his protection? I guess that can be up for debate. I think she needs more protection from herself, from some of the words that she's been saying. I think she needs self-regulations, to get up out these streets and have this street mentality and this destructive communication process that she has going on. So with all that being said, there's a mass misappropriation of power and might. Will did not ascend to his higher self. I'm not saying he can't ascend as a result of that, but I'm saying that wasn't the cause of him going off and doing that. It was not about him protecting his lady, because if he truly wanted to protect his lady, he would take away the cameras, he would take away her microphone, he would protect her from her. He would protect her from future entanglements. There's a lot of things. He told Chris Rock to keep his wife's name out his mouth, but there's some things he need to keep out his wife's mouth, and that's not derogatory. I'm talking about the disrespect. I'm talking about these red table talks. He needs to keep those conversations out of his wife's mouth as well, and move more into a healthy state. So what can we learn from this as we just conclude this 3-part series? Choose your mate wisely, very wisely. And if you realize you chose wrong, don't stay for the sake of staying. And I'm not against marriage or people working through things. I think under the right motivation, circumstances, and situation, that there could be restoration for a broken relationship. But it takes two. Two have to be willing to do that. So if the one you chose wants to be for the streets, hey, let them be for the streets. Don't try to salvage and defend inappropriate behavior. Don't try to manipulate your response to something that's honorable. That's not honorable, because you're not in an honorable relationship. I know. I've lived through that. And the worst thing you can do is love somebody more than you love yourself. So start loving yourself first. Well, let me back that up. Love the Most High. Then you were created in his image with honor and glory. So love yourself. Then you find a helpmate that's willing to honor and bestow glory upon you, and not shame, and putting you at emotional deficit, and putting you at risk of doing something that's going to produce less than desirable results, because she's not honoring you and she's not respecting the glory of your position as the headship in that home. So change starts from the inside and then it works out. If we'll have respect at home, Will have respect around everywhere else. I mean, look at him. He's a millionaire in movies, popular movies, TV shows. Will has accomplished a lot. No matter how much you accomplish, no matter how established you are, you will never be enough to the wrong person. You can never be enough. You won't make enough. You won't have the right kind of job. They won't appreciate how you look. They won't appreciate how you dress. You would never be enough to the wrong person. And that's how you know it's the wrong person. So in my anti-marriage or anti-working through things, in the book Outwitting the Devil, it talks about marriage and divorce. And if you go into the book of Malachi, chapter 4, I believe, it talks about how God hates divorce, hates it. So in the book Outwitting the Devil, it gets in there, it's like, is God opposed to divorce? And even in scripture, it gives you way out. But even in that, he makes the statement that the only marriage that are supposed to stand are the Most High established. There's some relationships that we're in, or that we got ourselves in, that God did not establish. You know, we put ourselves in the situation and then we ask God to bless it. The only ones that are going to stand and should stand are the ones that the Most High has orchestrated. How do you know which one the Most High has orchestrated? It should be bringing you to a place of peace. There should be a sense of restoration. There should be a sense of ascending a building. There should be a sense of them feeding into you, you feeding into them, you building, equipping. Not saying there won't be dissension amongst you, but that should be the exception. That shouldn't be the norm. Is it feeding you? Is it bringing you? Is it edifying you? Is it placing you in a position of honor and glory because God created you in his image? You're a little lower. Not a lot, a little lower. So if someone wants to make you earn their love and respect, and they say you need to do A, B, and C, don't try to earn love. Never try to earn it. And I learned that the hard way. You'll never be enough for the wrong person. They will never appreciate you the way you are. They will always look for you to be something different. And when you start getting on your task and purpose, you are enough. And if they don't see that, then it's time for you to have enough of them and time for you to be by yourself. Be well, young kings.
Danger. Once you get into the desert, there's no going back, said the camel driver. And when you can't go back, you have to worry only about the best way of moving forward. The rest is up to Allah, including the danger.